Okay, so welcome to this Stripe course that is going to be an overview of all the foundations required to master this powerful payment processor. Okay, so what is Stripe? Stripe is a fully suite of payment products that work as a payment processor, so you can handle accept payments, send payouts, connect accounts, connect sellers with buyers. Is a crucial technology nowadays. So who uses Stripe? The biggest tech companies and the most innovative startups, and a lot of like Kickstarter, Uber, Rappi, Corner Shop, Google, Amazon, Zoom. I mean, it's very polymorphic. Stripe is very, very powerful, and it's a crucial technology, a tipping point technology, an edge technology. So what are you waiting for becoming an expert on Stripe? Why Stripe? Okay, it's about creating value. You know, if you are a startup, you need to become an expert in money, how to make charges, securely authenticate payments, manage cards, and other type of payment methods. And you cannot invest a lot of time, like, for example, creating a lot of APIs for charging Alipay and credit cards and maybe MasterCard and Visa. So Stripe makes a concise work for making very easy to manage the money and the payments. So, for example, to pay sellers, you can use Stripe Connect, you can make charges, you can securely receive payments, and you can sell worldwide. So how Stripe works? It's about security. The money must be secure, and Stripe uses the best industry standards. So Stripe best practices. Never store credit or debit cards on your server. So when you collect in your front end the credit or debit card, the best way to manage this technology is to connect your front end with the Stripe backend, and you will receive an ID, and this payment method ID you can pass to the server, and this payment method doesn't have information that compromises the security of your customer. So also Stripe authenticate the payment using the latest SSA, that stands for Secure Customer Authentication, a strong customer authentication, and 3DS secure payments that is widely used among a lot of banks. So when to use Stripe? In apps, we're selling physical products. Also in web for physical and for digital goods. For startups, when you need to move the money between sellers and buyers, and and for a big company and a big app idea, because it's a very powerful technology. So the core of Stripe is by communicating with the Stripe APIs, and you can communicate with the APIs via the front end or your back end. So the first thing you need to do is to authenticate to Stripe. So Stripe recognizes you if you're going to communicate with your backend with the Stripe backend or APIs. You need an authentication to do authentication, and you need a publishable key in the case of if it's front end, and a secret key if it's backend, your backend. So, for example, here we can see a private key, publishable key, and when you see the underscore and live, it's a live key. So you begin testing with publishable key that has an word that says test. because live is when the environment is set for production, but you need to make a lot of testing with first creating an environment for testing and test a lot of cards that are available in Stripe. So connected accounts API. So here you can connect accounts using a header Stripe account. So you can create accounts and send money, receive money, associate customers, retrieve payment methods. It's very powerful. Okay, errors. It's crucial to manage or handle errors. You always expect a 200 status code as response when you communicate with an Stripe server via your frontend or your backend. A 400 error means a bad request, 403 means forbidden, 400 and something else range that indicate an error of the given information that you provide in that request, and 500 are very rare errors that occur when Stripe servers fail. So you always expect a 200 as response for your request when you request some information at the Stripe API. If you have in the range of the 400s, it's because you pass the wrong information, or maybe for forbidden, you don't have access, unauthorized, or you're making too much requests. Stripe backend. In your backend, you can use several languages that has the API libraries to communicate with the Stripe backend. The most common languages for backend or the supported languages are PHP. In this course, we're going to use Node.js, but also you can use Ruby, Go, Net, Python, etc. Idempotent request. These idempotent requests are used for don't charging the customer twice or don't calling twice in a Stripe API. This occurs sometimes when the network fails. Maybe you make another request, or the request is so if you create an idempotent request, you will only call once. So it's important to create a unique key. So if you call the server the API twice, only one call will work. So metadata. Okay, the objects like account. When you create an account or you retrieve an account, you can update an account and add key value pairs. For example, if you have a customer or a payment intent, you can add an order ID, so you can match the order ID with the payment intent. For example, so you can recognize your employees or your team can recognize what order ID you use. So it's very useful to add metadata. So here's an example of how you work with metadata. For example, here you add, when you create a charge, you are adding this object, order ID, and you're passing a string. So you can recognize which order ID is associated with this current charge. Charges. Okay, this API is like deprecated and is not, we are not going to use this API. We're going to use the API payment intent that works with SSA and 3D secure payment. But for the knowledge, charges was an old API that was used in the past. The required parameters are amount and the currency. Is very important also to pass a customer, and as payment source is like crucial to pass this information. I know it's optional, but it's like the best practice. Okay, let's see the customers API and the customer objects. Okay, so customers are recurring charges. So here we see that when you create a customer, you need to pass an ID to unique identify the object. So this ID can be retrieved. You can create you create the Stripe customer, and Stripe sends you back in the response the ID and creates a unique identifier. It's part of the customer object. And the email, you can create a customer with an email. So it's also a unique identifier, but several emails can be attached to different IDs. So the recognizer, the identifier is the ID, but you can create a customer by attaching an email when you create, or by updating the customer object later on. Payment methods API and payment method object. So here we see the endpoints. Also, the payment methods have an ID that is the unique identifier of the payment method. For example, it can be a MasterCard, it can be a Visa, a debit card. So, okay. The payment method can be and must be attached to a customer. So you can be very organized, so you can know which customer has which payment method, so you can check that in the Stripe website, and you can check which customer has attached which payment methods. And the payment methods are vary. There's a lot like Elipay, cards, and a lot more. So payment intents. In this course, we're going to use the payment intents. Okay, so here's the endpoints. So to create a payment intent API. Okay, if you want to charge the recommended ways to create a payment intent API, so you pass an amount and a currency is required. You can set confirm equals to true. This information you need to create not in the front end but in your backend, and you connect with the Stripe API. Don't worry, this is only an overview. We're going to see step by step how to do this, so don't worry. I recommend to attach a payment method when creating a payment intent. Also, the customer that will receive, that is going to be charged. Here's an example of a payment intent in Node.js. So you use a wait, you use a Stripe payment intent create, you pass the amount, the currency, and I recommend to pass the payment method. And with that's okay, because if not, also you can attach a default payment method to a customer, and if you attach it previously, you don't need to pass the payment method. Okay, this tutorial ends here. Don't worry, we're going to work very hard in creating a beautiful store with the latest technology, and I will guide you step by step. So thank you.